Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Today I want to talk to you about some of the most important and urgent issues happening in the world right now. The Middle East conflict, the Ukraine-Russia war, and the oil price cap scheme. These events are not only affecting millions of lives, but also shaping the global oil market and the balance of power. In this video, I will explain what is going on, why it matters, and what are the challenges and opportunities ahead. So let's get started. First, let's talk about the Middle East conflict. As you may have heard, there has been a new outbreak of violence between Israel and Hamas, the militant group that controls Gaza. The fighting started on October 9th, when Hamas fired rockets at Israel in response to Israeli police raids on the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound in Jerusalem, a holy site for both Muslims and Jews. Since then, more than 200 people have been killed in Gaza and 12 in Israel, according to health officials. The UN has warned of a humanitarian crisis in Gaza, where more than 2 million people live under a blockade imposed by Israel and Egypt since 2007. The blockade restricts the movement of goods and people and limits access to electricity, water, and healthcare. The Israeli airstrikes have also damaged or destroyed hundreds of buildings, including schools, hospitals, and media offices. The international community has been trying to broker a ceasefire, but so far without success. The U.S., which is Israel's main ally and arms supplier, has expressed support for Israel's right to self-defense, but also urged it to avoid civilian casualties and de-escalate the situation. Other countries, such as Egypt, Qatar, Turkey, and Norway, have also been involved in mediation efforts. However, both sides have rejected each other's conditions for a truce. Hamas demands an end to the blockade and the Israeli occupation of Palestinian territories, while Israel demands an end to the rocket attacks and the disarmament of Hamas. The Middle East conflict is not only a humanitarian tragedy, but also a threat to regional stability and security. It could spark a wider war involving other actors, such as Iran, Hezbollah, Syria, and Saudi Arabia. It could also inflame tensions between different religious and ethnic groups across the region. Moreover, it could affect the global oil market, as the Middle East is home to some of the world's largest oil producers and exporters. Any disruption or uncertainty in the oil supply or demand could have significant impacts on the oil prices and the economies that depend on them. Speaking of oil prices, let's move on to the second topic of this video, the Ukraine-Russia war. This is another ongoing conflict that has been escalating in recent months. It started in 2014, when Russia annexed Crimea from Ukraine after a popular uprising ousted Ukraine's pro-Russian president, Viktor Yanukovych. Since then, Russia has been supporting separatist rebels in eastern Ukraine who want to join Russia or form their own independent states. More than 14,000 people have been killed in the conflict so far, and more than 1 million have been displaced. The war has intensified in recent weeks, as Russia has launched its biggest offensive in months on the strategic town of Avdiivka, which is close to the rebel-held city of Donetsk. The fighting has put thousands of civilians at risk of shelling, freezing temperatures, and power cuts. The Ukrainian army has been trying to repel the Russian-backed forces with the help of Western military aid and training. However, Ukraine faces a huge disadvantage against Russia's superior firepower and manpower. The Ukraine-Russia war is not only a humanitarian crisis, but also a challenge to regional and global security and stability. It could trigger a wider war involving other countries that are part of NATO or the EU. It could also undermine the international order and norms that are based on respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity. Moreover, it could affect the global oil market, as well as Russia is one of the world's largest oil producers and exporters. Russia uses its oil revenues to fund its war efforts and its geopolitical ambitions. This brings us to the third topic of this video, the oil price cap scheme. This is a new initiative that was announced by some of the world's major oil consumers last week. It is aimed at reducing Russia's main source of funding for its war, while maintaining supplies to global energy markets by keeping Russian oil flowing at lower prices. The oil price cap scheme works like this. The G7 countries, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the UK, and the US, the EU, and Australia, have agreed to a maximum limit of $60 per barrel on seaborne Russian oil. This means that those countries still buying Russian oil must pay that price or less, or they will be deprived of access to key services supplied by firms in those countries. For example, if China buys Russian oil at $70 per barrel, it will not be able to use the SWIFT system, which is a global network for financial transactions that is based in Belgium. This way, the scheme hopes to discourage other countries from paying higher prices for Russian oil and to force Russia to accept lower prices or lose its market share. The oil price cap scheme has several aims and challenges. The main aim is to weaken Russia's economy and its ability to wage war by cutting its oil revenues. According to some estimates, Russia needs an oil price of at least $80 per barrel to balance its budget and sustain its military spending. By lowering the oil price to $60 or less, the scheme hopes to create a fiscal deficit and a social unrest in Russia that could pressure its leader Vladimir Putin to end the war and negotiate with Ukraine. Another aim is to stabilize the global oil market and the economies that depend on it. The scheme hopes to prevent a spike in oil prices that could result from a disruption or a shortage in the oil supply caused by the war or by other factors, such as sanctions, sabotage, or natural disasters. By keeping Russian oil flowing at lower prices, the scheme hopes to ensure adequate supplies and affordable prices for the global energy consumers. However, the scheme also faces several challenges. One challenge is to get other big energy consumers, such as China and India, to participate in the scheme. These countries have strong economic and strategic ties with Russia and may not be willing to comply with the oil price cap or face the consequences. They may also try to find alternative ways to pay for Russian oil, such as using cryptocurrencies or bartering goods. Another challenge is to avoid negative impacts on other oil producers and consumers. The scheme could hurt the revenues and the economies of other oil-exporting countries that are not involved in the war, such as Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, Nigeria, and Venezuela. These countries may also try to increase their production or their prices to compensate for the loss of Russian oil revenues. The scheme could also hurt the consumers who rely on cheap oil for their transportation and industrial needs, such as in Africa and Asia. These consumers may face higher costs and lower living standards as a result of the scheme. So these are some of the main points I wanted to share with you about the Middle East conflict, the Ukraine-Russia war, and the oil price cap scheme. I hope you found this video informative and interesting. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Leave a comment below, share it with your friends, and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. Also, don't forget to check out my other videos and social media accounts where I post more content about current events and global issues. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!